All right, here we are for our AI webinar. Mastermind webinar. And I'm so excited to have my man Alexander and the masterful Dave Freeze here to get us going. We got a great agenda for today. Alexander, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Today we're going to look to be a lot more interactive. The first part of it is just our welcome and kind of to get things going, is for us all to just share one specific AI win that we encountered right over these past 30 days. That's important because as we have these webinars, as we aim to be a lot more interactive, we do want to ensure that, hey, if a person has a win that we haven't come across, that we haven't seen, it's a great opportunity for us to just learn from each other, and maybe see how that fits into our daily life and our operations and whatnot. Yeah, that's one of the first parts. Then we'll get into some strategic, foundational content in which Dana will talk about the content clarity loop, which I love what she put together. She's going to go through some custom GPTs for everyone. Then we're going to go through the famous OODA loop strategy and how important that is when it comes to your overall marketing. And then from there, we go through some live implementations, which we will build a tactical content tool. And then we'll just end off with like an overall AI roadmap and just next steps.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is fantastic, Alexander. And I'd like to just lead it off because I'm fresh off of an AI conference in San Diego where I was surrounded by some very smart people. And so yeah, I guess if you're listening to this later, be sure to let us know. Email any of us any of your wins so that we can, or make sure that if you hop on one of the calls, you can share it live because we really want to know how everybody is using this and the results they're getting. It'll help us to be more helpful to you. So when I was in San Diego, two things really leapt out. One was that we were starting to fine tune our own custom GPTs, which I think we're going to get into with everybody so that you can do what I'm about to describe. And my Alex Freeze and I both built custom GPT to refine our avatar and purpose value mission. And we found a really high level copywriter that had created a custom GPT to explore what we would call avatar. And so we took what we already know about our avatar, which everybody on this call knows my avatar is built out fairly thoroughly, and it's a very narrow avatar. We're going to talk about that later with the 80-20 rule and why we might want to focus on repelling that bottom 20% that causes all the trouble and really focusing on the top 20%. And so we're going to show you tools in this call and over the next few calls that you could use to really do an amazing job on this. So one of the things we put into this copywriter's custom GPT was our existing avatar information. And this thing was fantastic. It came back with like, what would this kind of person be doing in their incognito browser tab? What would they be writing in their journal? If they had a semi-drunk call with a friend, what are the things they would be saying? And when you hear me say that, you might go, well, how is that helpful to me as a lawyer in building my practice? And it could be extremely helpful because it's giving you insight into the deepest, darkest pains, anxieties, worries, concerns of your avatar. And it was very good at giving you the language that they might be using. So admittedly, custom GPTs are going to be like the next step. And you can do this by just using your access to one of the paid AI accounts and maybe even the AI within some of the tools that you're using like Clio or whatever it might be. But this idea of force multiplying how you get clarity about what you want to do, what your purpose is, the mission that you want to accomplish over the next 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, however you define that, who your avatars are for each of your services or bundle of services. Using AI in this way is just, it just keeps getting better. Every time I use one of these or test one of these new large language models. Now, not every custom GPT that we'll show you how to build will be as good as this one we used. But my point is that you can build them and you can get access for relatively modest cost a lot of times. And then the other thing, the other point I wanted to make was that you could start thinking about what custom GPT could I offer to my clients? No matter what you do, there are problems that your clients have or ways they want to get information, and books and reports are still good as a way of attracting clients. But if you have a GPT that solves a problem for them and you've built it out with your knowledge, that could be the thing that you give away to a client. That could be the thing that you give as a premium to the client. That could be one of the things that magnetically pulls clients to you to get access to that. So those were two really powerful insights that I got.
Dave, could you explain that a little bit more? Like, how would that work
Sure.
on a tactical level? Like, I get it. Like, how would you create like a custom chat GPT for a client?
Sure. So if you're a law firm, let's say in my case, some people might want to do a preliminary calculation of Pennsylvania inheritance taxes or federal estate taxes. And so you could create a GPT that would ask them a series of questions, or into which they would put some information, and then and it would have all kinds of disclaimers that says, these things matter, but it could give them an assessment of whether a federal estate tax was going to apply to them. Or you could have somebody want to know, like, should I have a revocable living trust or should I have a will? And these GPTs could be a tool to both deliver information to them, dispel myths, and to help them get an answer to a burning question that they have. So any place where you might have previously used a report or some other thing that you gave away in your marketing process, be thinking about, is this a better place to give them a custom GPT? Now, look, I mean, I have an older client base, right? So will they want the GPT? Maybe not my clients in their 70s and 80s, but I'll bet you my clients from the mid 40s on up that have a lot of wealth would want to know, does the federal estate tax apply to me? If I'm a PA resident, should I have a will or a trust? A tool that helps them to work through those areas. So what you would do is you'd build the custom GPT, and then you can either put it behind a paywall, or more probably you would maybe put it behind a wall where they would have to share information. A prospect would have to share their contact information with you to get access to it. Want to know, in a general way, if the federal estate tax applies to you, let us know. And then you can both give them access to the GPT where they would use it, and you now have a way of communicating with them with more detailed information and ideas about, like, either how to use the GPT or what else they need to know when they're using it, or if they're concerned about the federal estate tax, other information about the federal estate tax. So you could build a campaign around it. Does that make sense, Tom? Am I answering that question?
100%. And I wanted to give another benefit of doing this with ChatGPT or Claude. I use Claude, but and I want to tell a story what happened to me this week when I was using it to. I was looking to, I want to build a podcast studio. So I went in there and I asked Claude, okay, here's the location where I want to build the studio. What are some of your suggestions? I want it to be a podcast studio, an office, and an apartment. What do you suggest? And it came back with three suggestions. One was like one of these classic, commercial places. Another one, which shocked me, was my realtor, the guy who's a friend of mine that sold my building and I bought the building from, Tartan Properties, that listed him down there as somebody to talk to, and then something else. And I was so blown away by that I called my friend and I said, I wanted to let you know that you just showed up in my chat when I was asking about this. And he was like, well, that doesn't surprise me. He goes, because I have trained the Chat GPT, and what he did was he did an interview of himself. And I went on and do that yesterday, and I shared that with Dana and Alexander and stuff like that. That's where I got that from. But where Claude actually sat down and interviewed me about my business and the 30 years that I've been in business. Now, the reason why I say that's a side benefit, not only do you get the information that you're looking for, but you're loading all of that
Yeah.
information into the AI to be out there. And what's happening is everybody's going to AI instead of Google now to do asking questions and doing searches. And so what you're doing, and so by what Dave's talking about, being a lawyer and putting out information, you're putting out information into the AI search engine world. So when people go there, you're more likely to be found in AI just as well as Google doing a regular keyword search. But when people do these long prompts, you're more likely to be found for your specialty. So I found that fascinating.
Alexander, do you mind if I do a follow-up to Tom? Because Tom, there was another big insight that I got in San Diego, which is that they had a guy there who was really in the vanguard of ask engine, like LLM search optimization. And it's very hard to figure out what's going on now, but he has 4 engineers asking 4 or 5 questions a day, 4 or 5 times a day. So they're getting a lot of data. And one of the things they were comparing was if you search on Google, who comes up if you search a particular thing, and then how big is the overlap with some of these other LLMs where you ask it a question. And they were finding with everybody but Google's AI that there was like a 65 to 75% overlap, meaning the AI was delivering the same kind of sources as a Google search. Now, for lawyers listening in, that's still a problem because people aren't going to your website. They're getting the answer, even if your website is the source of the information. But what was very
But they're
interesting,
listing you as the source of the information. So the
yes,
people you're like, well, I want to work with this guy that knows the answer to my question.
yeah, it's still good. It's very good, and you
Yeah,
want to do
100%.
that. But here's a very interesting thing. At Google, when they look at the AI search results of I guess it's Gemini versus Google, so Google's own AI, there was only a 25% overlap. So,
Interesting.
well, here's what they found out was that Google has like the other search, the other LLMs are using Google's prior search data, whereas Google has abandoned its own gigantic body of search data for its AI and is using it differently and experimenting and finding its way. And so sooner or later, Google is going to have a major advantage over these other search engines that are, or these other ask engines like LLMs that are going to be using old Google data. So some very interesting things happening there. And I guess the point and why I bring it up, this technical thing kind of down in the weeds for the lawyers, is because if we're not paying attention to that, which we can't because we're practicing law, we need somebody like Foster who's watching what's going on and trying to figure this out. And when they get data, help us to translate. And I'm here to help them with this from the lawyer side. Together, we help you guys to translate what is this raw information we're finding into actionable things that you can do. So both Tom's little share and mine, if you just did either one of those things, you'd be way ahead of the curve of virtually every other law firm in your market right now.
Yeah.
So Alexander, sorry, Tom and I were like rambling on, but back to you, sir.
No, you both hit on really profound points that I kind of just wanted to take a quick minute to break down. And what Tom was explaining as far as how important the information is that you're putting into OpenAI, ChatGPT, and how it will leverage that information towards the public and then give you a higher probability of showing up when someone else does a search within that ChatGPT. For lawyers, it's like a pro and con. It's a good and bad thing, right? The good part is if you leverage it for just information that can be of public use, just certain questions and things like that, then absolutely the ChatGPT will remember that. It'll probably give you more stock, all that good stuff. However, it works against you, back to a point, Dave, that you made at the top of our meetings about code of ethics and just being ethical, making sure you don't break any violations by uploading things that are not for public consumption. So that's where the meta aspect comes into play, where you know the difference, right? You know, okay, I know this type of output that I want to get from an LLM, but I know that a standard profile of ChatGPT will likely not be the best use because that's going to put a lot of information out of there. However, if I were to create an enterprise ChatGPT or go over to Google, who leverages their cloud, in which the information is a lot more private than it is over at the standard custom GPT, then that's going to be a better use. So that just goes back to having more knowledge about which one is better for which output that I'm trying to get out of. The other part that was brought up was how Google is currently leveraging their search within their AI versus other models. What's
That's
important,
fascinating to me, that right
yeah,
there.
what's important to know about that, Tom, is the context windows and the tokens that you're essentially using every time you are working with a ChatGPT or a Claude or a Gemini. They use tokens. I'm sure you know what the tokens are, but that's basically like, we used to go to the arcade and you would put quarters into the game and to play it. It's essentially like that. Every time you are requesting some type of output, the longer your prompts are, the more tokens that you use. So ChatGPT has a window of about 264,000 tokens in like one session, whereas Gemini might use 1 million, right? So already you're looking at a disadvantage or just a proportionate difference in how much information or benchmarks that ChatGPT can use in one session versus what Google can use. So back to Dave's point, there will definitely be a time or a point where Google is just going to have such a leg up because they were able to grasp a lot more information from a lot more people over the course of these past few months, right? So I just thought all of that stuff you were talking about was fascinating for that.
Yeah.
And the implications, I guess, as a practical matter for lawyers, is that there are so many changes taking place across so many platforms that have integrated AI in so many ways that none of us, like, we would need hundreds of employees working full time but this group can surface the things that matter most to lawyers that are going on. And then our job, I think, or I feel, and I think this is what you guys that are members probably want from us, is that we can help you to transform it from, oh, this raw knowledge about something wild that's going on and what it probably means into the future, into a strategy, and then into particular tactics that you're going to deploy over a period of time. And then back to a point that Alexander made, all of this will work better for you if you really work that idea of what the client profile looks like. And there may not just be one, you may have three different services that you offer. Like, we all offer elder law services, very sophisticated estate planning services, and then services for banks and trust companies and individual executors and trustees. Well, obviously those avatars look very different. So we have to be constantly working on them and refining them and going deeper with them, and then finding out what's the implication of that. Like, I've had lawyers say to me, oh, I've got it. I've got my perfect client profile and avatar. I'm done. No, you're not done. You're done for the moment where you're going to be working on it. But the environment is changing. The expectation of those clients is changing. Who fits into that client profile is changing. What they want from you is changing. The pricing they expect to get from you is changing. So this is something, how they speak about the issues that you're dealing with, it's changing all the time. That's why a group like this is invaluable, because it can help you to work through that and not to get stuck. The minute, I will just say this to lawyers, the minute you think, oh, I've got my purpose, my value and values and my mission down, and I understand my client avatar or profile perfectly, I'm good. The minute you hear your brain saying that, you've got to stop, because that is a trap. Because standing still in this world, which is being accelerated by AI, is falling behind.
Well,
Somebody
no,
paid attention to that.
I just have to say a win, just that, because you made me think about that, which is um, we had two clients, right? Two client interactions. I'll just mention one. Dr. Shaw over at Atlas Psychological Services. He's down in Georgia, and we were talking about the ideal client profile. And so I was asking him, hey, well, how would you define this? He named a few different traits, and what lawyers or business owners tend to do is they name the top cases that they want, and then they say that that's my ideal client profile. So a personal injury lawyer would say a person who was in a severe accident or severe truck accident would be my ideal client. It's like, well, there are some other things there are some nuances there that you're potentially missing. When you think about your top client, not only is someone who fits your practice areas that you want to go after, but look back historically to see the progression of those top clients. Did they leave a review for you? Did they appreciate the way you educated them throughout the whole process? Were they answering the questionnaire that you provided them very quickly, which allowed for the case litigation to go a lot more smoother? Like all these different things are not considered when they're thinking about their ideal client profile. And so the win for us, or I would say what I noticed was you could see Dr. Shah's brain just kind of going a bit more. He was like, oh yeah, I didn't think about what happens after we finish up with them. Would that also factor into them being a perfect client for me? All these different factors. And so once he started to take stock of that, he realized from the start of them being introduced to who I am, there's opportunity there for me to leverage on my marketing side, on my operations, for how my team is talking to the clients, their intake, the intake system, really the whole nine. So, Dave, that's a great point you mentioned, is just how if you hear your brain saying, hey, I know my perfect client, all that stuff, I'm good to go, you have to stop immediately.
And go back and cycle through.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Alexander, if either you or Dana have anything that since our last meeting leapt out at you, at you guys, like a win from if within Foster or for one of the clients.
Yeah. Dana, you want to?
That's an interesting question. I actually attended a talk last night from a collegiate writing instructor who was talking about how AI has affected how he teaches the writing process to college students. And even though it was aimed at a more academic audience, there were still some really good points there that I took down to share with the Foster content team.
Dana, that's an awesome point because I would say that we see AI changing how we onboard, how we create the onboarding process because we customize it for each person. We're now integrating. When we're interviewing clients, we're asking about their experience with AI or their openness to it or their attitude around it. We are hiring for capability in that world. We're building it into the onboarding process to give them further training. We're building a feedback loop so we can find out how people that say they don't have a lot of AI experience, but they're open to it. How fast do they come on board versus people that have a little bit of experience? Sometimes a little bit of experience is a dangerous thing because if you got the experience in an environment where the law firm wasn't a savvy user of AI, you might have developed some bad habits. So I like that a lot. And all the lawyers listening to this should be thinking about that. How is this affecting how we select people and train people both when they're first coming on and on an ongoing basis because we've integrated AI commenting and some training at various places where we didn't even have it 6 months ago.
Exactly. And adding to that, another exercise we did was I wanted to ask the AI, hey, I want you to judge my reputation. I want you to judge my authority. Take a look at my site. Let me know how I relate to this, how I relate to that. What it provided me allowed for us to go into certain client calls and just pose questions to them that they didn't think about, right? Like, how you view yourself, how your website looks, all of that. But it's great to use AI occasionally to figure out, hey, what do you think my reputation is? What do you think my authority is online? When it comes to estate planning, how known would you say I am in my area versus other people? Like all these different things. That's speaking deeper to you're not only training the AI to think differently, you're training yourself to think differently about your firm.
And that, Alexander, I think relates to what Tom was saying too. By having those conversations, you're calling AI's attention to yourself and how your mind thinks and what you are known for. And so, well, we don't know this for sure. I'm not sure that anybody does, regardless of their level of technical proficiency, but we suspect that exercise that Tom did of the interview and the exercise you just described is priming the AI pump to take more notice of you and have more detailed, appropriate information so that it serves you up when somebody asks the AI question, the appropriate answer.
Yeah. And with that, Dana, if you're still there, we can go into the content clarity loop that we have here. And then that'll go into our OODA loop strategy as well.
Okay, do you want to pull up the story doc or my
Yeah, for sure.
notes? Okay.
We got some show and tell here.
We
Oh, yeah.
do.
Dane always has good stuff for us.
Yeah, this is good.
Okay, so the content clarity loop, the main point here is that we can't be vague with our prompts. A bad prompt, and this is what we see a lot of people who are unfamiliar with AI do, is they just say something very simple, like write a blog about personal injury law. That's going to get you absolutely terrible content. It's not going to be usable. It's not going to be personalized to what your firm needs or what your ideal client profile is. A good prompt would be something more along the lines of draft a 500-word blog explaining the top 3 mistakes Fairfax residents make after a car accident that hurt their personal injury claim. That's a little more specific. You're moving in better. Me?
Dana, I think we might have lost you then.
We lost Dana.
While we're waiting for her to come back, I can add a couple of things to that
Yep.
that we've talked about, that Dana and I have talked about before.
How about now?
Oh, there
Can
you
hear
go.
me?
We're back.
All
Yeah,
right.
Yep.
Sorry
you
about
can hear
that. I'm having some video trouble today. A better prompt would be writing a 700-word blog post for Fairfax County professionals in their 40s and 50s who were recently injured in a car accident. Emphasize how missing medical appointments and posting on social media can weaken their personal injury claim. Use a professional, empathetic tone, and include a call to action to schedule a free 30-minute consultation.
that is an excellent example of perfect clarity on a prompt. And I love this example because it shows you what most people do is this bad prompt. They just lazily throw something in there, and that's what 90% of the people are doing now. And even still, the
Exactly.
good prompt is not even there. But I love this better prompt, Dana. I love this.
I actually have a best one to share later when we get into the custom GPTs. That one is 566 words long and much more detailed.
Nice.
Dana, you and I have talked about this before. I'm still finding, despite what people tell me, that in my prompts, giving the AI a defined role and sort of a background that it should consider is helpful too. So, for example, I might, if I was a law firm using this, radically improved prompt you just gave us, I might say, acting as an attorney with 20 years of experience in this area who also had an extensive background in marketing and who repeatedly has run successful marketing campaigns for their own and other firms, then do this thing. And anecdotally, and I can only talk about it anecdotally, that still seems to produce a better result than not giving it, well, for certain types of prompts, than not giving it a role to play or giving it guidance about what sort of things to consider.
Excellent
Yeah,
point.
That's very true. I still do that about half the time. I have a
Yeah.
content repurposing prompt to share, and that one begins with, you are a professional content strategist. Your task is to repurpose into distinct formats.
I think that's where you and I are on the same track then, is that we're using it when the writing is going to be of a more technical nature or translating something from a technical nature to usable by civilians. I'm more likely to use a role in the prompt there.
That's a really good point. On the content team, much of what we write does have to meet very specific format requirements for meta descriptions and titles, headlines, etc.
Dana, did you want me to showcase this as well? I had it up.
Okay. And then our next point here for the content clarity is just simply to think of AI as kind of a legal associate on steroids. You can use AI tools to create those targeted articles and guides that speak directly to your top 20% of clients. You can create customized follow-up emails and intake scripts that build instant trust. And a lot of that can be done by repurposing some of the content that you've created for your website. And then for retention, we can create newsletters and client alerts and then updates to help keep you top of mind. And again, the repurposing of the AI generated content for your website can be really helpful there.
I just want to add to this real quickly because funny enough, what this outline mimics is the funnel aspect, right? If you're thinking about the funnel, you're thinking about top of funnel is attraction, right? So of course that's crucial. That goes into a lot of things we do, especially as it relates to marketing. Then you get deeper into the funnel, and then we get to conversion, right? What actually happens when they do land on your website or take a look at your offer, all those things. And then you get to another crucial part that sometimes gets overlooked by lawyers, which is retention, right? So they don't think about the importance of newsletters, systemized updates, all those things. How do I turn one client into multiple clients? Of course, referrals are something that all lawyers count on, but I don't typically hear a systemized or strategic approach towards getting those referrals. So this outline is a great example of that.
That's a great point, Alexander.
I would just add one thing, and I think this is just a difference in how we're expressing it. I like to think about on the repelling side, I'm trying to repel in my mind, and this may be the difference between existing clients and prospects. With prospects, we tend to want to repel not the 80%, but the bottom 20% that are clearly not ready yet and probably never will be. I try to bring that the bulk of them in, and then when I'm talking about clients, I try to adjust the avatar so that I'm repelling, the experience I have with the bottom 20% of my clients, who are the ones that still get through the system, but that cause all the trouble. And then I'm trying to focus on bringing in more of the type of clients that are in that top 20%. But I don't try to repel 80% of prospects or clients, because a lot of people that aren't ready yet, they have like a vague awareness of the problem, but they haven't gotten to the point where they're ready. We can get them into the system and then accelerate their readiness. We could say, if you're feeling this, check to see if this, and this are also problems. If so, you should probably do this now. And so we move them from a vague awareness of the problem to actively seeking a solution to the problem, or already knowing that we're the solution to the problem. So it's this ratio of repelling the bottom 80% that I just wanted to talk about there.
That was
Can I ask a
entirely a
question?
typo on my part. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem.
Dana, how would you incorporate repelling the bottom 80% into a prompt?
Well, she's saying 20%, which I agree with.
Yeah, it's
Either way.
Yeah.
So typically how we do that is we create a document that really describes who the client is looking for, those demographic characteristics, and we say to write with that particular reader in mind.
Tom, I'll tell you that we create avatars, which are the ones that we have trouble with. So like our avatar is, for example, in the age demographic, men and women from the ages of 52 to 72 who are married or widowed with children and grandchildren. So within that group are people that are highly interested in doing what we want to do and working with. But within that group are also people who have been remarried multiple times, have children by different spouses and or partners. There are people who don't want to share financial information, which is essential to what we want to do. So we build that into the anti-avatar. And then to your point, when we're prompting, we say we want to attract these people, and we want to gently repel or have readers realize that this is not for them if they meet these requirements. And that prompting does work very well.
I'd love to see an example of that prompt, maybe on the next webinar that we do. A full length, Dave, of example of that, of your prompt of that, and how you load it in, a tactical prompt.
Sure.
All right. So the next one here, we just have a little bit of alliteration to kind of go over some of the concepts that we discussed. They have define. You want to identify exactly who your best 20% of clients are. You want to direct by crafting precise instructions for AI based on that client clarity. You want to draft it, have the AI create the content for you. And detect is just monitoring how your audience responds to the content and how effective it actually is. and then distill afterwards. Once we have that data, we're going to go back and take what worked, we're going to refine it further, and we're going to keep tweaking those prompts so that your content gets better month after month.
Can I add something to that, Dana?
Yes.
I think that lawyers can get better outputs by training the AI around their voice and how they like to express things, and it's getting better and better and better at remembering that. And a lot of the large language models also allow you to input kind of guardrails that are going to apply to all of the prompting. So I guess what I'm saying is you can already get stuff back out more in your own natural voice using your vocabulary. But I have another step in here. I don't let anything go. And I think you guys are telling people to do this. It's just implicit in what you're writing here. I don't let anything go out without me making some modification to it so that I'm bringing that human analysis, or when I say me, I mean whoever on my team is using the tool. You want some human oversight of the output, and you want to modify the output because you're still better than the AI in a lot of respects. The AI is better than you at looking at huge chunks of data and distilling it and figuring out certain strategic ways of expressing things. But you want to make sure that you're working on training the AI to deliver the content in your voice, in your way of expressing it, and then going back in and editing it within the AI or editing the output in order to get something that's even more naturally yours. That may
Yes, that's an excellent point.
Perfect. And then Dave, next we have we wanted to touch on the OODA loop and just how important that is as it relates to marketing strategy.
Sure.
Touch on that first?
Sure. And people may notice as you go through these, if you've attended like a year of these masterminds, there'll be certain things like mindset of resiliency, how to trigger creativity, getting clarity, using the OODA loop that are going to be recurring themes. And they are recurring themes because you cannot talk about them enough, because we all have a tendency to skip this piece. And this is the piece, like doing something distinguishes you from the other lawyers in your marketplace. Doing something that's more of the right thing at the moment makes you even more powerful. Doing this kind of stuff puts you in the top 1 or 2% because nobody else does this. And Dana just talked about it. You put a piece of content out there, the OODA loop is going to force you to go look at what happened when I did it. Did it achieve what I thought it should or better? And so let's just review the OODA loop and how it works. The first thing is you observe the marketplace, or the marketplace in which you're working. So this might be looking at your last 2 to 6 months of the most traffic to what pages, and then saying, oh, people are really interested in this, and then asking yourself, is it the right person that this content is bringing in? And if so, if you've got high volume to a page on a piece of content and the right kind of clients seem to be coming from that, then you can break that down or go deeper on certain topics. And so AI can help you at this observe and orient stage. So you're observing the marketplace. Where are we right now? Orienting is deciding what options we have, looking at what options we have. AI can help you through that. AI, here's 2 pages that have a lot of traffic that seem to be getting me the right kind of people. What are other topics that my perfect client profile might be interested in or have a problem that we can solve? And then it'll define those for you. That's the orient part. Observing, we see what's going on. Orienting, what are my options that I could do? Deciding is, okay, which of these things am I going to do? Am I going to turn this into content? If I am, is it going to be video content? Is it going to be long form writing? Is it going to be social media? What is it going to be? Or is it going to be some combination of those things? And then, so you've observed, you've oriented, you found out what the options are, you've made a decision about what you're going to do because you can't do all of those. And then you act. And if law firms are doing any of this, that's where they usually stop. But the OODA is a loop for a reason. It's to give you feedback. So what you're going to do is when you decide what to do, you're going to say, I think if I do this, it should get this much traffic and it should produce this many people going to this page to download this report or custom GPT or whatever it is. And so then you go back and you do the loop and you say, did it meet or exceed my expectations? If it didn't, why? What were the outcomes? Did the people that come from this content call and make an appointment or do whatever you wanted them to do, download a report, whatever it might be? And then you go through that whole process again, because when you act and when you put out marketing and when you put out content and when you create a funnel of some type or another to take people through an experience and then get them to take an action at the end, you've changed the reality. So you've got to go back and look at the battle space again or the marketplace and say, okay, now in this new reality, based on what had just happened there, what should I do next? And you go through that loop again. That sounds
Can I
complicated.
pause right there? Because
Absolutely.
I just want to once again say the force multiplier with the OODA loop is so powerful, and nobody does it. Nobody does it, right? Dave, you're probably like the only lawyer that does this. And so hopefully the lawyers that are on the call are going to start implementing this strategy of the OODA loop of about just constantly perfecting what you're doing. Most law firms put out content and they're done. That's it. They think they're done.
And they
I've
may
done
be
it.
putting
I've
out
paid for
content that's doing harmful things, and then they keep doing it.
Right. And then they just double down on it without actually seeing if that shit worked for them or not. And that's what is so powerful about the OODA loop in this process. So I'm so glad that you continue to bring it up and explaining it, because we're going to have to redo it over and over again. It's like teaching your kid, brush your teeth, man. You can't just tell them once. You got to tell them over and over and over again.
Oh, I'm as guilty of this as anybody. And I see how it works. I do it, I teach it, and then sometimes I abandon it and don't do it. But it's easier to do than people think. So what the OODA loop means is when you create a piece of content or when you have a person on your team create a piece of content, they simultaneously, when they post it, also schedule 1 or 2 or 3 follow-ups. What kind of traffic did that get? To talk about these things. And then at least once a month, you should probably build an OODA loop sort of component into your staff or team meeting where we say, hey, what have we looked at? What did happen there? What should we be fine-tuning? What should we be eliminating? And what should we be, Tom, to your point, doubling and tripling down on? When we get a piece of content that really works, there are 50 ways to retitle that and reuse that to get that in front of people with a nuanced little change in the headline or the background or whatever it might be. For those of you who deify Alex Hormozi, Hormozi has some data on this that's just extraordinary, where in his social media, he just changes the background color of the thumbnail, or it makes these little tiny changes. And of course, Hormozi's not doing this, but his gigantic team of people are doing it. But it's relatively easy for us as lawyers to make these little changes, that nuanced changes that get that same content in front of somebody else or get somebody to review the content from a slightly different perspective and then act. I mean, how many times has somebody on this call thought, oh, I'd like to buy that thing, and they didn't, and then they saw it on social media again and they were like, oh, I should really buy that thing, and then they didn't. And then I don't know, let's make something up. It's a foot arch support or something like that, and then they have a pain in their foot after they run one day and they see it and then they buy it. It's not that they hadn't seen it before. It's just that little tiny change. They had a little tweak.
You got to hit them like 8 or 9 times, man.
Yep. And
yeah, it's that, but and also, and Dave, if I can just add into that, because you hit on a point that's great. We're talking about the nuances as it relates to content. Think about other areas, and I'm going to name something that's super simple but super crucial, which is the call to action buttons on your website, right? That's something that anytime you ask a lawyer, you might just get, yeah, it can just say request a free consultation, or it can just say contact me directly or something like that. And of course, they mean well by it because, yeah, you can get a free consultation. We don't often think, but what if we were to change that to contact me today, or speak with a lawyer today, or solve your problem right now, and then see what happens, right? So you observe how this current call to action button is currently performing, you orient, you decide, you act, and then you look to change it. And there are so many nuances in that, because it's not only changing the verbiage. What if you change the button from blue to green, and now all of a sudden people are clicking it a lot more because it's just more satisfying? And so it's interesting how what we're talking about pops up in so many real-time and real important examples.
100%. And then you get your control, right? Then you get your best version of that. And then you keep testing on those to see if you can beat your control.
Yep.
And that's the OODA loop. And so you want it like that's so powerful. And we're doing that ourselves, Alexander, right? You know, with our new commercials that we're doing, we're setting it up. Okay. And you got to make sure that you're going to get your data. You got to make sure that you're going to go back and check. Okay, let's match the data to what we did. All right, what didn't work? What did work? All right, now let's see what we can do to improve this. Right? Is it the commercial? Is it the call to action? Is it the landing page? There's so many details, but so many people, everybody just is so lazy about it and just like puts it out there and says, I'm done and I've done it. And then it doesn't work and they're like, oh, that shit doesn't work. And they don't even know, well, what didn't work, right? What didn't work in that whole process? Because there's so many things, like Alexander, you pointed out, the funnel. There's so many pieces to that funnel that could turn somebody off, your perfect client off. And you have to be monitoring that. When you do a campaign, you have to monitor that. Putting a piece of content out there is a campaign to get more people and to get more clients. And so you have to find out what is working in that campaign and what isn't.
Exactly. And Tom, adding to that, keywords and content are crucial for a lot of reasons. But another one that typically gets overlooked is how it relates to your perfect client, right? Because what you're talking about is the instinct a lot of lawyers and business owners have, which is what makes sense to them, but not what makes sense to your perfect client.
Yeah,
So you
good
might
point.
say, I know the end result of what I want is more wrongful death clients, but you might not be thinking about if your perfect client is actually typing in wrongful death into their search. When something like that happens, they might be typing in something that's completely different, which is where the research part comes in, which is the important stuff that Dana's always talking about and we're always talking about, where aside from yourself, do the research on your perfect client, your ideal client profile, because it's going to blossom for you in so many different ways. And you'll thank yourself for having done that research and continuing to do that loop.
Think about that too, using your example. Like lawyers want more wrongful death cases. So volume. I want more wrongful death cases, but the person doing the search doesn't want more wrongful death, right? So they're going to completely be doing a different kind of search. You know, like they don't want more death in their life. They want less death. You see what I mean? Like you have to switch it. You have to think like your prospect is thinking.
So I'll give you a trust and estates example because I know we have trust estates lawyers in the group too. Trust estates lawyers that do elder law work often will say, will put out content about Medicaid qualifying trusts. Well, no one wants information about Medicaid qualifying trusts. They really don't want information. They want a solution anyway, but they'll definitely go for information about how to keep grandma's house from being lost to the nursing home. It's just that difference of the curse of expertise. The lawyers are lawyers. They've been trained in this process, and they have this secret language that they use amongst one another and in court with judges. And they keep communicating that way with lay people who are at different points on the journey too, like how we talk to our avatar when they're merely becoming aware of the problem versus how we talk to the avatar when they are ready to make a decision versus how we talk to our existing client, to Alexander's point, when we want to retain them and trigger them to make good referrals to us. Those are all different ways. We're going to use different vocabulary and they have different knowledge. But having said all of this, let's not make it sound impossible for lawyers to do this. There are a million things you could pay attention to. One of the roles of this job is to help you to pick the ones that are most important, because you're not going to pay attention to every aspect of everything that we've talked about on this call or other calls. what you have to be able to figure out, and don't be afraid to use your intuition here, because like we go, our intuition's flawed. The data is typically flawed too. It's hard to figure out like what actually caused somebody to act. Was it the six things they saw before in that particular order, or was it the last thing that they saw? So my point is just this. Any of this that you do, any extent you start to think about OODA loop, that you start to get clarity about your perfect clients, how they talk about things, any of that you do is going to distinguish you from your competition. And there's certain aspects of that that are more important than others, and they look and sound like this. Who are the avatars and how do they think and what language do they use at various stages of the journey? What is your purpose? What are your values? What is your mission? How clear can you get on that so that you can pick things to do that align with that and don't cause friction? And if you're just being guided by those high level concepts, anything you do that is guided by them is either going to work or not. But if you're using the OODA loop, you're going to find out. And then you can double down on the winners.
Yep, exactly. And you just made me think, I won't take too long, but just a quick example. Phil Cavish is one of the members on the AI Mastermind now. And we had I think we had a couple meetings maybe earlier this year where we were talking about the difference in just basically appealing to that perfect profile, that perfect avatar when it comes to estate planning versus estate administration, right? And for estate administration, it's specific, but we had to think, are people actually typing in estate administration? Do they know what that is and all these different things? And so that looped back into our content strategy, our advertising strategy, our SEO strategy, all these different things. And so again, back to Dave's point, what we're talking about is how AI can act as a force multiplier and ensuring that we streamline that process, because we know how long it will take us to just do that on our own. But if you bring AI into the fold and in any of the ways that we've talked about, you're already ahead and you're in that 1%.
I think we've given everybody a lot to think about, but
Yeah.
Alexander, do you want to just talk a little bit about the roadmap and next steps, and then I'll just review a couple of things that left out to me.
Yeah, we only have a few more minutes left, guys.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. So for the roadmap, we will basically just outline the content workflow and how it's a critical component of phase 2, which is workflow automation and amplification. So Dana, if you want, we can put together like a content workflow what we talked about and send that over to our members, unless you feel we could send something else to them.
We can put together the workflow and send it out.
It's great.
Perfect. Okay. Because to a point that Dave mentioned, hey, we threw a lot at you all, so we just give you something to work on in the meantime. That's great. You're going to make strides there. And then what we want to do is coming up on our next call next month, we would love to actually walk you through creating 2 separate custom GPTs, one that will focus on content, and then I want to work on one that will focus on your ideal client profile, and also creating like regulatory watchdogs, which we will talk about more.
Are you guys planning on building a GPT that we could share with the members as a benefit, or helping them to build their own GPT?
Hopefully it'll be a bit of both. So I want to live create it with us, and then we'll walk through just basically how to do it. And once they implement that on their end, they'll see all the benefits of what we've talked about.
Perfect. So just to review a couple of things, Tom came up with a really good one. He's using Claude. You could use ChatGPT. You could use both. You could use whatever AI, large language model, to interview you about your career, to interview you about who you are, to interview you about how you feel about and what motivates you in how you help clients, to interview you about the various services that you provide and the problems they solve for clients. There are all these things that by conducting that interview, having GPT or Claude or whichever do that interview, you are both probably priming the pump and getting it additional information about you and the locale where you work, so it's more likely to serve you up, but it's also giving you a usable series of pieces of content.
On that note, I just want to say, when you were talking about Google's Gemini, and what it's doing. I took the same prompt that I put in Claude to ask me to start the interview into Gemini. And instead of starting an interview in Gemini, it just gave me search results over how to create a prompt to do an interview. So it didn't actually work the same way. Like in the ease of use in terms of like what Claude is doing and Chat GPT, the ease of use in doing that interview was so much better than what Gemini is doing. So I don't know what's I never even go over there, but I was just going to see if it does the same thing, and it didn't.
Interesting. And then just one or two more quick observations before we sign off. The schema markup is going to be more and more and more important. Not that it's not now, but it's more and more and more important as these ask engines, we're asking them to optimize for ourselves. That is not something that lawyers want to be concerned with, but I think we should probably put it on the agenda to talk about with everybody, because that's something that you guys are doing for them and making their
Yeah.
websites like super effective at getting the attention. What we're talking about here is there are things that Tom's team and Alexander can do in how the content that you're producing is structured and presented on the web that make it easier for the large language models to access it, just like they used to for search engine optimization to get the crawlers to detect it.
100%.
So you don't want to be responsible for that, but you want to understand that because it also helps to understand the value of what the team at Foster can bring to us versus building a site where we're unaware of those things and just operating that way. So those, I think that was a lot. That was a lot
That
for
was
one
good
session.
stuff, guys.
But
Yeah,
be
that was
sure to
amazing.
send us questions. And Dana, who gets questions from your end? You're welcome to send them to me at dfreeze@utbf.com and copy L. Snyder at utbf.com. But then if they have questions for Foster directly, or the things that they want us to deal with in the next couple of sessions, who gets
Just
those?
send it to Tom Foster at fosterconsulting.com. And that goes to everybody in the company. So that's the best way to do it, to get questions answered from us, guys.
All righty. Well, thank you,
All right.
everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks so
thank you so
much,
much. It was
everybody.
great.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Dave Freeze.
Awesome. Thank you
We will
all.
see you guys. Thanks for everybody that attended. We'll see you next month.
See ya.